Hey, fellow authors. It's Carissa here from Author Revolution. Now, this August, we're really excited to introduce our new quantum manifestation mind magic meditations and hypnoses designed to help you align with your highest potential. Inside Your Future Self, which is Tammy and my monthly meditation and hypnosis membership for authors, you'll get access to these powerful programs along with our other themes like Money Muse, The Healthy Author, and New Beginnings. With 10 programs to keep you on track, there's something for every aspect of your writing journey. Join now and enjoy your first week absolutely free. Visit authorrevolution.org/YFS to get started. Transform your writing and your life with quantum manifestation mind magic this August. Don't miss out. Welcome to the Author Revolution podcast, where change is not just embraced, it's celebrated. I'm Carissa Andrews, international best-selling author, indie author coach, and your navigator through the ever-evolving landscape of authorship. Are you ready to harness the power of your mind and the latest innovations in technology for your writing journey? If you're passionate about manifesting your dreams and pioneering new writing frontiers, then you're in the perfect place. Here, we merge the mystical woo of writing with the exciting advancements of the modern world. We dive into the realms of mindset, manifestation, and the transformative magic that occurs when you believe in the impossible. We also venture into the world of futuristic technologies and strategies, preparing you for the next chapter in your author career. Every week, we explore new ways to revolutionize your writing and publishing experience. From AI to breakthrough thinking, this podcast is your gateway to a world where creativity meets innovation. Whether you're penning your first novel or expanding your literary empire, whether you're a devotee of the pen or a digital storyteller, this podcast is where your author revolution gains momentum. So join me in this journey to continue growth and transformation. It's time to redefine what it means to be an author in today's dynamic world. This is the Author Revolution podcast, and your author revolution starts now. Well, hi there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Author Revolution podcast. Before we get started, I want to make sure you are aware of our upcoming masterclass, Burnout to Balance. Now, this masterclass is going to be talking an awful lot about how your autonomic nervous system is playing a role in your stress response. And as authors, we are constantly inundated by all the things that we're trying to do, all of the hats that we're trying to wear, all the ways that we're trying to reach our readers. And it's time to be able to take back some of our power. One of the things that I've really discovered this past summer is how much we can be out of coherence when it comes to our autonomic nervous system. And so I've been developing and working on different strategies to be able to help us not only understand and recognize when we're in heart coherence or in a state of true balance, but also to recognize that when we're not manifesting our author career in the way that we really want, if we're not seeing the gains and the awesomeness that we're really looking for with our books, it's time to start going inward, right? So that's what this masterclass is going to be all about. I will make sure that the link is in the show notes today, but I want you to be aware of it because I think it's going to be super, super powerful for you. Now, with all that said, we're going to be talking about a very important topic today, and that is self-doubt. My guest today is amazing. She is a certified life coach and developmental editor, as well as an author in the making. She's been writing most of her life, and she's also working on her first novel as well. So without further ado, help me welcome Charlotte Chipperfield to the show. Well, hi there, Charlotte. It's great to have you on the Author Revolution podcast. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you and learn more about what you do. So before we get started, do you want to tell my audience a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Carissa. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you in this author community that you're building here. But yeah, I'm Charlotte Chipperfield. I am the creator of Her Narrative, which is the container that I help authors to write a page-turning novel that keeps readers up at night past their bedtime. And I do that through both book coaching, so working one-on-one with clients, and then I also do developmental edit and manuscript reviews. And I really created her narrative to be a safe place for those who identify as women to hold the space to really bring forward their creativity and the story they'd like to tell in the world.
I love that. It's such a unique way to be able to come at the author community as well, especially, focusing on the women. And I know that you offer a lot of insights into self-doubt because that can be a part of, like, obviously being an author. We have all of these imposters in our heads telling us things that we can or can't do. So when you were creating throughout your journey, I guess, of creating her narrative, how has it influenced your own battles, like with self-doubt? Like, what has your journey as a writer been?
Absolutely. I mean, self-doubt is a part of that journey. And that's why I've also incorporated the book coaching into what I do. I know from my own experience in anything in life, when we take on really big projects, our brain starts to go, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know. And
Right?
there's all sorts of narratives that come up. We freak out. The self-doubt can be really, really strong. And so that is just a huge element of what I support writers in. And I also know from my own experience. And I have been a writer since I was a kid. And, other kids were out playing soccer and I was at home kind of self-publishing, put that in quotes,
I love that.
self-publishing my own books with like cardboard covers and a ribbon binding. And I just have always been drawn to storytelling and kind of reenacting stories. I used to also reenact the boxcar children out in the backyard. Like I just loved
Too cute.
their spirit of independence. And so, as I got older, I think there was definitely a lot of a narrative around you can't make a living as an artist or you can't be successful as writing, like writing's a hobby or, kind of those societal imprints that sometimes will come in. And so, as I became more of an adult, I didn't really give myself permission to engage in writing in the way that I truly feel like I have a soul calling to do. And so I kind of moved away from the craft of fiction a little bit. I went into a career in marketing and then have now circled back to my passion. And so, in all of that, in starting something new, there's so much self doubt that comes up, especially if you're starting a new business or writing a book. It's such a big undertaking. And so, it's very natural that we're going to have kind of these ebbs and flows of our feelings and emotions that come up around kind of fear of failure, fear of rejection, the self doubt. And so I have definitely felt all of that in my own journey and questioning if I'm a good enough writer, questioning if I can start a business. I mean, those are all big things that are going to come up along the way. And so it is part of it is accepting that that's going to be there and just being able to learn to work with it versus trying to push it away or make it different or prevent you from taking any action.
Oh, for sure. And I think women in specific do actually, like, imposter syndrome impacts us in such a huge way because we think, oh, this is like something that is going to be so difficult, or men are the ones that are doing this and they're doing it so well. I mean, especially in the self-publishing industry, when you look at a lot of the big coaches or a lot of the big groups are run by men, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And why is it so different from what they're doing? And all of the things. And it just starts to, especially in the beginning, if you're not aware of the fact that so many of us go through these phases and have the self-doubt, have all, like you just described, all the things happening, and we don't know it's normal, then it's easy to, beat up on ourselves over it or think that we're doing it completely weird or wrong or wonky. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, self-doubt is such a big part of it. And that imposter syndrome. Yes, it's definitely that feeling of like you're a phony or there's not space for you. And I think so much of women, and I know for myself, I feel like there's definitely a lot of narrative around like, don't take up too much space. Like you can have a little space, but like,
Mm.
don't take up too much space. And so I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of that we start to question, like, is my story going to be good enough? Is anyone going to want to read this? Am I allowed to take up that space? And so I know I've worked through a lot of that with my own working with a coach myself and in therapy and really kind of learning to own my own space and own my voice. And that was really a lot of the foundation for why I created Her Narrative was to hold that space and let it be a safe space for women to kind of learn to use their voice and kind of expand and grow and see an experiment in a place that's really safe in
That's
order
so
to tell their
good.
story. Mm-hmm.
That's so good. I think back to my beginnings too. Like when I first started, I was very optimistic. I had all the things. I was putting myself out there, but then you have those, outside people, and typically they're well-meaning relatives. Like for me, it was my mom who was like, oh, I can't believe you're sharing that on the internet. Do you know what the internet is? It's forever. It's like,
Right.
and so then you start to shrink back and you're no longer quite as vibrant as you were, no longer quite as interested as you were. And sometimes it can really impact us then obviously with marketing, with being seen, with being able to sell our books, all it impacts so many of the things, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So, in your experience working with authors, are there any common like sources of self-doubt that like beyond what we just described? And how can authors then identify, or address where they're coming from with these?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think a lot of self-doubt can be from so many different sources and it's very personal. And so I think again, when it does come up, we don't want to necessarily judge or shame where it's coming from. And some of those common places that I've seen with clients is it's very much so a center around kind of this fear of the writing not being good enough. It's fear of no one liking their book, which is that fear of failure.
Yeah.
There's also, that imposter syndrome of, I shouldn't take up space or everyone's going to think I'm a phony. And a lot of self-doubt is really rooted in our lack of confidence in ourselves and our abilities. And again, I think it's taking on those narratives if they are our own, or yes, family, relative, or teachers, or mentors are cautioning us. I mean, sometimes that's coming from a very loving place, but again, we can sometimes take that in as our own, which we don't have to own.
Yeah.
But it can be really hard to stand for something different when everyone around you kind of views the world differently. And so I think the first way of kind of starting to tackle self-doubt and to work with it, and I say to work with it because we don't want to necessarily just like shame it and push it away and be like, oh, this is a negative feeling. I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
There can be really great insight into some of these lesser desired feelings. And so I think the first step is really just having grace with ourselves. Like we are kind of learning and starting something new. And so having that grace with ourselves can be really just important so that we're not so hard on ourselves. And to really begin to address self-doubt, it starts with that acknowledgement. And then I think as writers, something that the tool that we naturally have is being able to write down what we're feeling. And so I often invite writers to take out a piece of paper and just write down what they're feeling. Like no one has to see this, no one's going to read it, and just really kind of dump everything that's coming up around self-doubt or imposter syndrome or any beliefs around fear of rejection. And then I actually invite people to then take that piece of paper and then set it away from you so that you can kind of look at those feelings a little bit more objectively. It doesn't mean that you're not going to still be feeling them, but to be able to kind of see them a little bit removed from yourself can also be really insightful just to see, you don't have to beat yourself up, that these are feelings that are coming up right now. They are normal. And then from there, there's a couple questions that you can then ask yourself. So the first question is kind of what about this experience feels so scary? So the
Mm.
experience could be looking at those feelings. It could be the experience of starting to write a book or to start the editing process and just kind of naming the thing that feels the scariest.
Smart. Smart. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes we are like that fear can continue to build and become really big. Same with the imposter syndrome. Like it can feel really big because we're too afraid to name the scariest thing. And
Yeah. Or
sometimes
look
once
at
we,
it.
yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes once we name it, we're like, oh, okay, like I felt that before and still things worked out. Or I feel that, but now that I've named it, it doesn't feel as intense. So it can be a really powerful exercise and just kind of leaning into the scariest feeling. And then once you kind of have named that, kind of what feels so scary, it's a really fun question to ask. If fear or this self-doubt or this imposter syndrome wasn't in the way, what would you do differently?
Mm.
And I love this question because now it's taking your brain to sort of expand into what's possible versus kind of focusing on the negative or kind of sitting in that uncomfortable feeling and really looking at like what would you do differently if these feelings weren't there? And then from there, I think it's really great to ask, what is one action step that you can take to move forward in that direction? And this can be super, super small. So if you are starting to write a book, it could just be, I'm going to open a document today or and name it so that I know this is the document where I'm going to be writing my next book. It could be that you need to go take a nap. It can be super small, but like, what is one action that you can take moving forward that's going to help support you in going towards this goal that you have in front of you?
That is so smart. Yeah. Because when you look at it and that you're describing it so well with, it's our narratives in our heads, we're telling ourselves stories. So if we can look around the thing that's keeping us stuck or the thing that's, keeping us small, I guess, to what is it that we really want and how to move toward it confidently, even those smaller action steps are going to get us there. I mean, it might be slower, it might not be like instantaneous, but at least it helps us get on the right track versus staying stagnant in that one place. for too long. That's smart.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, there's going to be waves of this. I mean, I know from my own
Sure.
experience in writing that self-doubt is going to come up at different times, but it's having these tools that are going to allow you to kind of, again, lean into it and kind of get any insight that you can in order to then move forward in these small ways. Because writing is such a journey. I mean, I think there was at one point in time, I was like, I can just write a novel in a weekend.
Yeah.
No, not at all. And so being able to just embrace the journey and just know that there's so much to be learned in that process. And all these feelings are going to come up around the way, and that's perfectly okay.
Absolutely. How many books do you have published now at this point in time?
I don't have any published yet.
Okay. That's okay.
Working on that. And yeah, it's just a really fun process in writing.
Yeah, it was, and it's so funny, isn't it? When we look at the way that we love to do things, we love to write, we love to overcome self-doubt. Sometimes it's like we keep ourselves in this place because we kind of like that. I don't know, it feels safe. I know that that was definitely the case for me when I was beginning. And it was like there was this part of like, if I put it out into the world, that was the scariest part. And then once you start doing it, I think what happens is like, it's not as big of a deal each time. And it just gets so much easier. But at the same time, I don't know, for me, it's like, I don't love the books as much as I did that very first, where it was so scary time. It's so weird. It's like, it was such a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we're bringing forward such a creative endeavor. And so it's natural that fear is going to come up. And it's scary to put that out there because then other people, it's like not yours anymore. You're now sharing it with
Hmm.
other people, and people are going to have opinions, and it's art. So there's like lots of different opinions about it. It's all very subjective. And so it can be very hard to just kind of fear that it's all just going to be completely negative.
Yeah. I think Joss Whedon said it best. It was like, art, like writing in any way, shape, or form, it's like it's yours until you release it into the world. And it's like a teenager that grows up and talks back to you. I love
I
that.
love that. I know that's amazing.
He turned out to be like not the greatest guy, but at least he had some good one-liners. He had some
Yeah,
good
there you
insights.
go.
Oh gosh. Okay. So in all that you do with her narrative, how do you empower writers, particularly women, in finding their voice and confidence in their work when they're working with you?
Yes, I mean, this is such a big piece of it. And, I definitely try to lead by example. I mean, like I've talked about, have very much so been in the same shoes. I'm on the same journey. And so I'm also doing the work and have been doing the work. So I definitely relate to the experience that many authors are going through. And so for me, it's really about empowering writers by holding that space and creating a very safe space to dive into some of these emotions, especially when they feel extra sticky and uncomfortable. It's also a safe space where your voice in your story will remain authentic, especially on the editing side. I know a lot of clients are like, oh, I'm so afraid that my developmental editor is going to just kind of tear apart my book or tell me my voice doesn't work. And so for me, it's all about retaining the author's voice and intention and just looking for a couple of areas where it might up level the book from a reader experience. So
Right.
it's really about allowing the author to lead in the space, if it be on the coaching or the editing side. So this is a very personal journey and it's them telling their stories. And so I meet my clients where they are and provide that space and provide the tools and the support that they need in order to get to where they want to go.
What do you think called you to this work? Was there a pivotal moment where you're like, I really need to help them understand their worth? You know what I mean? Because it's like I even feel that myself sometimes where it's like, especially in regards to like what they believe they get to have. Because like you said earlier, so many of us think that you can't earn anything from your writing or that, being an author isn't a real, purpose or a real career. And it's like, no, this is absolutely crucial. And so where did that start for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's honestly been something that's been a slow burn in the background for a really long time.
Okay.
And again, it's kind of, I went into this career in marketing because I wanted to tell stories of brands. Like I thought I'd be the most creative in that space. And then it very much so became numbers, technology. I was working more with the engineering team than I was working with any other team. And I was like, my brain does not work like this. This is so draining for me. And I spent a lot of time kind of using a lot of the tools I'll use with clients, just sitting and reflecting and like turning into these emotions or like, what isn't working here? And like, where is this resistance coming from? Or where's this frustration coming from? And it was in those spaces that I was like, kind of came back to what I was saying when I was a kid. Like other people were out playing soccer, I was writing books. And so I kind of came back to that and was like, that is what there's like a soul calling and a soul purpose. Like I knew I wanted to work with women. I knew that I wanted it to be story driven. And it's just one of those things that kind of, I kept following my joy and I kept having the next step present itself. And so
Love that.
I feel very lucky that it all came together under her narrative. And I definitely never really understood the phrase of like, if you enjoy your work, you never work a day in your life. It's not to say that that's not work, and sometimes it does feel like work, but there's such a joy behind it. It doesn't feel like a drain, and it really energizes me. And to see authors really bloom and own their voice and be so excited about what they're writing and to embrace the journey and to put their work out into the world, which is also a soul calling for them, I think is just such a beautiful thing to witness. And I
Yeah.
really think that the more stories that we have women sharing, I think that can actually ignite change. You know, if you think back through like in my schooling with our English classes, like we read so many books from the point of view of the male perspective. And so I think we've been kind of starved for the female perspective. And now we're seeing a lot more of that come into the foreplay, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's so good. And I agree with you there. Like my childhood was the same. We read a lot of, the Hatchet and like all the things. And
Yes.
it's so good to see. I feel the exact same way. It's like connecting with authors and then watching them bloom. Like for me, it's more on that spiritual side right now. We teach my friend Tammy and I teach authors how to manifest and how to tap into like more the spiritual side of things. So we've got things like meditations and hypnoses. And so your language was like, I'm like, I feel that so hardcore. Yes, I love it. But there's something in that when they realize or they start to shift from like almost I don't know if depression's the right word, but kind of like their light has been dimmed and they're not quite sure about themselves. And it's a self-doubt, I guess. They're not sure about themselves and what they're capable of anymore. And then when we start, talking about different ways to look at things, different ways to write the scripts in our heads, it's just so powerful to see them light up and then find their joy again and then off and running. It's
Yes,
so good.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's so good. So what about criticism? Okay, we often have to deal with criticism as an editor. We get criticism from you guys and we're like, so is there any way to be able to constructively handle criticism without letting it fuel the self-doubt? Hey there, authors. Are you ready for a unique writing challenge? I'd love for you to enter our Hits Different Short Story Awards for a chance to win first, second, or third place prizes. But here's the twist. You've gotta meditate to get your short story idea before you write it. Once you've received your hit, feel free to create your masterpiece. Head over to authorrevolution.org/hits different to learn more and sign up. Unleash your creativity and let your story hit different.
Yes, there's definitely a couple techniques there. I mean, I think again, acknowledging that self-doubt's going to come up along the way is just so important, and knowing that there are sometimes a lot of outside influences that will challenge that. And so, when we're thinking about how to handle criticism, I think there's a couple of ways to do that. And so, as a writer, always a stage where we have to invite other people into the process. So that is working with editors and getting their feedback. And so the first step with that, I think, is making sure that you're working with the right partners. So wanting to make sure that you are talking to editors before you hire them. I know that I offer, consultations and love to get to know writers before we agree to work together, because we want to make sure that we have a shared vision and passion for the outcome of the book. And I want to make sure that I can support you, and there are certain genres that I don't work in because I can't sit around reading horror books all day. That's like, I will have nightmares for days. So, again,
Same.
it's like making sure there's certain genre alignments and personality alignments and goal alignments. I think that's really important is finding the right partner first so that you can trust in their feedback and their process for presenting, anything that needs to be fixed. And it goes the same for if you're in writing groups or have critique partners, making sure that you have the right people and understand how they give feedback and also understand how you want to receive feedback. I think that can be really great to spend time in thinking, do you prefer to like get feedback and go sit with it? Do you want to talk it out? Like all of those things are really important to just know about yourself so that, again, you can find the right partners along the stage. And then I think the other thing that I always remind my clients and authors that I talk to is that all of the feedback is feedback. It does not define what you need to do next. You ultimately get to decide which feedback to incorporate and which feedback you can be like, okay, I can see why they said that, but like I don't want to do that. And so this is ultimately the work that you are bringing forward in the world. And, again, it's a learning process, so you can become a better writer through some of this feedback. And then second, it is still your story. So you get to decide which feedback is going to be most important to your story. And not everyone is always going to agree on that, and that's perfectly okay. And then I think the third part or the third tip with criticism is to, if you are feeling overwhelmed by the criticism or unsure of what advice to take or what feedback to take, I invite authors to take a step away so that there can be a little bit of time to really let it all marinate and just remember why you were writing the book you were writing and like what is the purpose behind that story. So then you can come back to it with fresh eyes and a little bit more objectivity so that you can really kind of get down into the bolts and nuts and bolts again and really decide which feedback is most valuable.
That makes so much sense. I think too, when you have someone like when you do that step one where you're connecting with someone who really does get you and understand the point of what you're doing, understands your voice, you're on the same page, it's a lot easier to, when you get the criticism back, to go, okay, they're doing this, they're saying these things because they want to elevate the story, not because I'm bad, not because this is wrong, but because they're trying to help. And so then I think that probably does help with the objectivity as well, to be able to look at it a little bit with loving eyes, I guess. You know what I mean? That
Yes,
this is
exactly.
all meant to help me. Yeah.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
So, how significant do you think the role of having a supportive community is when it comes to authors and being able to uplevel their self-doubt or uplevel just their security in who they are creatively?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think so much of the writing process can be so solo and separate. And there does come a point where we can invite other people into the process. And that is, through writing groups or critique partners or working with editors. And I think there's so much that we can learn. Because again, this journey of writing a book is not only about learning about the craft of fiction, or it could be nonfiction if you're writing nonfiction, but also like what you're learning about yourself. Like, who are you becoming as an author? And so, like we talked about with addressing some of the self-doubt around fear of failure, imposter syndrome, all of those things are actually making you a stronger and better person. And you are learning how to overcome some of those feelings. And so I think the being able to tap into community is so important because you're going to hear that other authors also experience self-doubt and fear of rejection. Even if they've written like 10 books, there's authors still that like have these feelings that come up along their journey. So being able to tap into that, to know that you're not alone, you're exactly where you need to be, and also find like the tools and support that you need in different areas to like tactfully write a book that people are going to want to read. And so I think that's so important. And I know that I've tapped into writing groups through Meetup. It has been really great for me. There's also some great organizations like the Women's Fiction Writing Association, which is all kind of virtual. They have a lot of virtual writing groups, which is really fun. I also know there's like Gotham Writers and London Writer Salon. Like there's a lot of different communities to tap into. And I've even found people on Instagram and TikTok. And so being able to just build a community can be so powerful, and being able to just be like, hi, this is coming up for me today. Can you jump on a call for 15 minutes? Or going to writer groups where you have dedicated time to write, I think is also really important, kind of that distraction free, dedicated time. I know it can be so hard to carve out time consistently in our calendars for that. And so for me, what's worked really well is having a group that's in a separate place from my desk where it's like, I'm not in that tug of war of I could work on my business or write a blog post, but to actually work on my novel has been really great to have that dedicated space.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I think there's lots of like small and bigger ways that you can find community of writers. And again, I think it's so valuable to just feel like you're not alone and just be able to tap into different tools and resources that people use.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And sometimes it ebbs and flows too, because when you're learning something or when you're really deep in the trenches, that's when we need that support and community. And sometimes then you back away from it for a little bit and then you come back to it. because I think authors are very introspective, obviously. We like to sit and stew and think about things for a bit and then come back at it and reflect with people who are in the same place because not many people get us,
I
right?
know. That is
we're
true. Yes.
we're kind of a different breed, us authors. And so when we get together as a community, I think it's so cool because then you do learn insights and you do learn that you're not alone, that you're not the only one going through this weird thing or, whatever. It's so good.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
So do you have any daily or regular practices that help maintain a positive mindset and keep self-doubt away that you use or that you teach other authors how to use? Hi again, revolutionary author. It's Carissa. Want to dive deeper into quantum manifestation? This month's Author Revolution Masterclass is all about the autonomic nervous system and how our energy plays a crucial role in manifestation. So join me for Burnout to Balance using heart coherence to navigate your author career on August 16th, 2024 at 1 p.m. Central Time. Discover how to use heart coherence to balance your energy and supercharge your writing journey. Head over to authorrevolution.org/masterclass to get signed up. Don't miss this transformational session.
Yeah, I mean, this looks a little bit different for different people, but I think, again, using some of the tools I mentioned earlier and being able to kind of sit down and lean into the self-doubt when it comes up, it can sometimes take 5 or 15 minutes just to spend time with that. I also think establishing a writing practice in some form that works for you, they look so different for everyone else. And I know that my writing practice changes a lot and it will ebb
Mm.
and flow. And so for me, just being able to know that I have dedicated time to write is also something that is super helpful. And then I think there's the education piece of it as well. So much again of the imposter syndrome and self-doubt can be rooted in that I don't know what I'm doing. Other people are going to figure out I don't know what I'm doing. And so being able to lean into learning about the craft of fiction, I know for me was a huge thing when I was starting out was I didn't know what I didn't know. And just by tapping into different like writing groups, I started to learn a lot more about the craft of fiction, which has then built up a lot of my confidence because now I'm like, oh, I understand more of the structure of a story and I understand the role of dialogue. And we don't just want characters talking for the sake of talking. Like when I started to understand the purpose of all the different tools and techniques within fiction, that's when I started to feel a lot more confident, even though I was like, I don't know if this is working yet, but like I'm rolling with it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so, yes, I think being able to arm yourself with some of those tools and just continue to learn as you are a writer is really something that's going to help you feel like you're not an imposter because everyone is trying to figure this out and learn. And then from there, you're adding in your own creativity and creating space for that. And so those can be really great places where, again, it's just little small steps that you can take that is going to start to build that confidence muscle. And then that self-doubt and imposter syndrome is going to start to kind of come down and feel a little less like heightened. And you're going to be able to really kind of enjoy the process a little bit more because you're going to be learning, you're going to be experimenting, you're going to keep moving forward towards that completed book.
That's so good. I think that's so smart. Do you have any recommendations for dealing with the fear of failure or the fear of rejection? Like, is there a specific tool you hand to authors when they're really freaking out? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
I
it's like
mean, yes.
sometimes they freak out.
Yes, yes. I mean, fear is very real. And I think the thing I like to remind authors is that, the fear of rejection is very real and it is going to happen.
Yep.
When we sign up to be an author, like there's no way to skirt around it. It's going to happen. And so I think making a little bit of peace with the fact that like rejection is going to happen. And especially the first time it happens, I think it's worth celebrating. It's like, yes, I did the thing.
Right? I
And
triggered
so
someone who didn't get me. Ugh.
I know, yes. And that doesn't mean no one's gonna get you. Like there, you just have
Yeah.
to find the right people. It's like matchmaking. You just got to keep going until you find the right people. And so being able to just kind of come to peace as much as you can with knowing that rejection is going to happen is really important. And then again, I think being able to ask yourself some of the questions I mentioned earlier, just like what feels the most scary about this? and then thinking about, what would you do differently if you didn't have the fear of rejection? And so that might be that you would continue to send out queries versus just sitting there not doing anything. So I think, again, there's different tools you can lean on, and it doesn't mean that you always have to be doing something. Again, stepping away might be what you need to do, especially, if you've gotten to like 100 rejections, maybe that's when you allow yourself to kind of step away and just breathe and just lean into the experience again. I know it's not fun and it can be such like a drag to be like, I have this amazing story I want to put out into the world, especially if you're going traditional publishing. It can be really challenging from that standpoint. So again, I think being kind to yourself in the process, being able to sit with the discomfort, and then continuing to lean on community and support to help you and continue to get some feedback, and make adjustments and keep submitting, I think will be really important.
Yeah, I think there's a certain point too when you're getting those rejections. It's almost like it's training you or helping you to, I guess, build thicker skin so that when you do elevate, when you do get to that point of, being out there more, and now people are buying your books, they are reading some, most people are hopefully loving it. And then maybe you're going to have that handful who don't, but then it doesn't matter so much. It just kind of rolls off. And so it's like, it's almost that incremental upgrade of our like thick skin and being able to just keep going and keep trusting that our voice, our words, our worlds, whatever matter. It's really important.
It is. Yeah. And I think being able to come back to your why. So, why did you write this book? What was your purpose in putting this out into the world? And staying tethered to that can be really powerful, especially in these moments where it feels like you're not getting traction, you're not getting anywhere, and just really kind of anchoring to that why and reminding yourself the purpose behind writing the book can be so powerful to keep you going when it doesn't
Yeah,
feel so great.
right. I agree with that. So, do you have like what role do you think personal development then plays? I know you mentioned keep learning, but is there a role for overcoming self-doubt, for being able to incorporate that kind of element into their daily structure? Like, do you recommend meditation? Do you recommend taking specific type of classes? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think personal development is such a big part of our writing journey. And I think it's ultimately the antidote to self-doubt over time.
Mm.
So I do think it is working with the right people, especially if you're feeling really stuck. I mean, that's why I offer coaching, is because I want to be able to work with writers and give them the tools and support in order to kind of work through these emotions, these feelings, and experiences that come up along the way. So I really think not only are you learning about the craft of fiction, but you are really learning about yourself in this process. And ultimately, it's about who do you have to become to be the author that you want to be. And that can be such a powerful journey if we are willing to take the invitation to continue
Right.
to evolve as a human and as an author.
Yeah, and sometimes I think those fears almost lead us in the direction that we're meant to be. Like almost sometimes I think when we're afraid of it, it becomes this hurdle that when we jump over it finally, now we're able to show other people, hey, not only did I do it, but I can help you do it too. Or maybe it ignites our purpose and puts us on a specific path. It's like there's all these different ways that when you overcome that fear of anything, it doesn't matter what it is, it's like there's almost that little spark of excitement because now anything's possible. Now anything can happen. I think
Yes,
that's a fun place to be.
absolutely.
Okay, so lastly, what's one piece of advice that you would give to writers who are struggling with self-doubt that you wish someone would have told you when you were first starting out?
Yeah, I mean, this sounds really simple, but I mean, self-doubt is a part of the process. And I think that is something I kept pushing away of like, I shouldn't feel this. If I'm a real author, then I shouldn't be feeling this. And so knowing that self-doubt is going to come up, and it isn't something that needs to be conquered or dismissed. It's really this like flashlight that's going to show you an opportunity to continue to and grow and evolve. And so I do think, it's an opportunity to keep going, to keep showing up. I mean, showing up is 90% of the battle. And so,
Mm,
yes, I
yeah,
think understanding it's a part of the process and that you can keep going and you've got the tools and community available and that you've got this.
yeah, and you're going to evolve. It's going to just keep growing, keep evolving as you keep working through it. It's so good. Awesome. Oh, Charlotte. Okay, so where can my audience go to find out more about you, what you do, her narrative? Where do they go to find it all?
Yeah. Well, my website's definitely the hub of it all. So that's hernarrative.com. And on the homepage, if you just scroll down slightly, there's a novel writing checklist, which is great for authors that are especially starting out, aspiring authors, to kind of look at all the different steps it requires to write a novel. And then also has two different tracks for traditional publishing and self-publishing, and lots of different educational resources in there as well. And then, yeah, I'd love for people to find me on YouTube at Her Narrative, and also on Instagram at Her Narrative with an underscore after on Instagram.
Awesome. Isn't it funny? You gotta do like those little
I
things
know.
sometimes.
Make it work.
Make it work. It's good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Well, Charlotte, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your insights today and having you on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there you have it, guys. Wasn't Charlotte amazing? She had so many great tips, and her energy is just so grounded and natural. I just love talking with her. She gave some wonderful, smart insights, and I hope you take away all sorts of goodies that came from this conversation that we had together. If you want to be able to check out Charlotte and all that she does, I will make sure that her YouTube, her website, and her Instagram are all linked in today's show notes. So head over to authorrevolution.org/248 and you can get all the goods right there. I will also include information for the upcoming masterclass. And in fact, I'm going to be talking about an awful lot of changes that are happening to Author Revolution. If you've been following me on Instagram or TikTok, you maybe have seen my Instagram story or my TikTok story about what's been happening on the back end of things. Guys, there's been a shakeup in my world. This summer has really kind of put into perspective how I want Author Revolution to work for me and be able to still write my books at the same time. And so there's some changes that's going to be coming. And one of the biggest ones is going to be how I deliver my courses to you. Rather than having them be available separately by themselves everywhere, I'm going to actually be creating two memberships to be super, super supportive of authors together in community work. So we're going to be creating this awesome community where you can come in. You have a community on like Kajabi, which is my platform for the courses and all the things. We can communicate day to day. We can do all the things, but yet you're also going to have group coaching that comes into play every single month as well, and access to two different tracks of the coursework that I provide. I've discovered that my role, the way that I've been doing things, really comes down to helping authors to not only feel strong and powerful and aligned in their author career, but also that the two main problems that I keep coming up against for these authors, for my peeps, is that they're either number one, struggling with their mindset, or number two, they don't know what aligned, inspired actions they need to be taking. So I'm going to be creating two tracks. They're going to be very different and distinct, but I just want to give you a heads up that if there are courses that you want to be able to get just one-on-one, now's the time to do it, because by the end of August, they will all be disappearing from the website as something you can purchase. And the only way to access the courses will be through the memberships. And the reason for it, my biggest purpose for it, is that I want to have that connection with you. And I want you to have that connection with me. Now, I'm a number one relator in the Clifton Strengths. And so for me, I want to be able to experience your wins with you. I want to be able to give you insights and one-on-one direction if you need it. Like, we'll be in a group setting with the group coaching calls, but I give people one-on-one coaching when they ask me questions. I give it to you specifically. So starting September 1st, everything's getting shut down. There will only be the two main tracks, the two main memberships that you can access and get in on. And once in a while, I will be launching courses separately. So like obviously in the fall, we launch Rapid Release Roadmap. And then in the spring, we also offer the Millionaire Author Manifestation course. Now that will not actually be a part of the program because it's only opening once a year. But I just want you to know that once in a while, I will drop courses solo, but it's going to be pretty rare. It's going to be me pushing the memberships because I want you into a community that really feels good, that makes you light up, that you guys, like the communities that I'm already building, the women and men in these groups are so freaking phenomenal. You would not believe it. And you're missing out if you're not in these groups. And so I've realized that my love for Author Revolution comes from this place, from this synergy, from this energy of collaboration and love that we all have together. So that's where my purpose is lying. That's the new direction of Author Revolution. So stay tuned. There's going to be more, I'm sure, that I'll share, but the website's going to be shifting. The way that I'm offering my programs is shifting. And if there's anything that you want to get solo, now's the time to do it. All right, guys. Again, if you want the transcript or any of the links, if you want to learn more about Charlotte and her amazing work, head over to authorrevolution.org/248, and you can get all the goods right there. Okay, guys, you know what to do. Go forth and start your author revolution.